Today on the Cameron Journal podcast, I'm joined by Corey Quinn. He is a marketing expert. We're going to shift to marketing and business today. He was Scorpion's chief marketing officer and grew from 20 to $150 million in revenue, recurring revenue in 6 years. He's coming here to talk about his book, Anyone, Not Everyone, a proven system to escape founder-led sales, which is now a bestseller. And he wants to talk about how to do sales better and escape founders doing it all and how to grow sales. So for all my business people, all the folks on LinkedIn who dutifully follow, this is an episode for you. If you're usually here for the writing or the politics, there's 300 episodes. Find something to listen to. But today we're talking about business. So, Mr. Quinn, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in your book, and we'll dive into the chat.
Hey, Cameron, super excited to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. So, as you mentioned, my name's Corey. But probably the most relevant history for this audience is I've spent about 18 years now in the agency space, digital marketing agencies, first as a salesperson and then a sales manager, and then I'm head of marketing, and now I'm a consultant. So now I'm working directly with agencies. My last in-house role was probably the most notable, which was for a company, as you mentioned, called Scorpion. We grew revenue from 20 million to 150 million in 6 short years. I swear I was not this gray when I started there. It was a lot of late nights, early mornings, a lot of work, a lot of fun, all those things, but a lot of lessons learned in that pursuit of growth. And so now, as I mentioned, what I do is I spend my time working directly with agencies who have hit the growth ceiling. And and I wrote a book about it. It's called Anyone, Not Everyone, as you mentioned. Thank you for mentioning that. And it's all about helping agencies to escape the founder-led sales trap and the generalist trap. So happy to talk about any of those things.
Yes, well, why don't we define those terms for ourselves first? What is the founder-led trap and what is the other one you mentioned?
Yes, the generalist trap. So the
Thank you,
founder,
the generalist trap. The
yes,
word was right out of my brain. The generalist
that's
trap.
okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. So founder-led specifically as relates to sales, right? So if you are an agency owner, or you could be a small business owner, maybe you run a CPA firm, or any kind of business, there comes a point in the growth of the business that, at least in the early stages, you need the founder to sell, right? You need the founder to pick up the phone, to make the cash register ring, to bring in the revenue. But at a certain point, the business gets big enough for the founder needs to step out of that role, and they want to, in many cases, work on other aspects of the business, focus on the vision, focus on bringing leaders. Yet, what happens, especially in the agency space, but other places as well, is that anytime the founder tries to leave the sales role, all of a sudden sales drop to the floor, revenue starts going down, and they're at risk of having to lay people off. The business gets in trouble. So of course they find themselves sucked right back into the founder-led role. And so the process that I've developed and I've written in my book is how to actually escape that role of being not only the founder, but more importantly, the salesperson when you no longer want to be that primary role in the company. So that's what the founder-led sales trap is. And then the generalist trap, it's interrelated. It's like two sides of the same coin, which is when you find yourself as a business owner, and this happens a lot in the services type of roles, consulting and agency and whatnot, when you're serving too many different types of clients, right? That's where on day one, maybe you're building a website for a dentist. Tomorrow you're building a social media strategy for a restaurant, and then the next day you're doing a PPC campaign for a landscaping company, right? Just every day it's a new thing, and as a result of that, it becomes very difficult to build any expertise in any one area. It also becomes very difficult to build repeatable processes, and as a result of being that generalist, you're stuck and you're no longer able to actually grow because you're dealing with too many variables in the business. So the book I wrote really addresses both of those problems.
Yes. No, well, I'm glad that we've defined it.
Yeah.
If there was one bit of advice you could give to someone in that trap, what would it be?
Well, the advice that unlocks the both of those traps, those trap doors. The key to unlock the trap doors is through specialization, meaning specializing in a vertical market or an industry. So, in other words, instead of doing SEO or websites for any small business, only do websites and SEO for dentists. Okay. As a result of, let's say, focusing your business on serving one market, let's call it dentists, and you're solving one problem, maybe it's lead gen or whatnot, you begin to build some expertise because you're doing the same, solving the same problem for the same person over and over again. It's like the old Bruce Lee quote. He says, I fear not a man who has practiced 1,000 kicks one time. I fear the man who has practiced one kick 1,000 times. And what you're able to create as a business owner through repetition is expertise and repeatable systems that allow you to step out of that founder-led role.
Yes, that definitely makes sense. Now, here would be the pushback in terms of the people that don't want to specialize in only one vertical.
Yeah.
What would you say to
Well,
them?
I would say you're probably not serious about escaping founder-led sales.
Yeah.
You probably
No,
don't
no, I
want
mean
that.
that's I mean, no, I think people need to hear because here's the reality. Whoever is listening to this will be thinking,
Yeah.
that sounds so boring. Why would I only focus on one type of client sort of thing? And so
Yeah.
that's what reason I asked the question is that person's thinking that in their head while they're listening to this.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I mean that's a fair enough answer to be kind of like, okay, the reality is if you're not moving towards that, you're stuck over here.
Right. And for some businesses, there's nothing wrong with having a small founder-led business. There's nothing inherently right or wrong about having a big business. It is only based on what the founder is looking to build, what the vision for their company is. It's when
Yeah.
they want to build a bigger business, but they can't keep getting sucked back into that sales role because they can't get anyone else to do it effectively. So that's when this becomes an issue. And typically, to your point, um, most people, most agency founders, and this again applies to a lot of different types of businesses, they will typically try everything else under the sun except for specialized because I think we all have a human bias around loss aversion, I think they call it, which is the idea that, hey, if I specialize, I'm going to be limiting my opportunity. The reality is, based on the research and the data, and I've done the research, is that agencies and businesses of that type that specialize in a vertical market grow 50% faster than generalists and more sustainably, meaning they have happy employees. They're able to maintain profits over a long period of time. So it is not a logical argument, it's much more of an emotional one, if that makes sense.
No, no, I think that's very important. Not that I run an agency or anything. I mean, I kind of do because a big part of content creation,
Right.
everything is marketing. Um,
Right. Yep.
I always laugh for a long time. Everyone was always pushing me to move the Cameron Journal into some sort of niche. And I had
Okay.
someone flat out sit on a Zoom call and say, if you don't pick a niche, you're not a serious person, sort of thing. And this will always be a hobby and never a successful business. And I'm kind of like, okay, that's fine. Um, and I laugh because I have been in this and lived with this long enough for that advice to become old hat, which is kind of funny, and I'm very much enjoying that.
Yes.
Sort of thing. And I think there is such a push in modern society. I think to some degree to our detriment.
Mhm.
Everything has to be so specialized. Like, do you
Interesting.
ever find that incredibly frustrating?
Well, I would say that for the ambitious part of me, the ambitious Corey inside of me,
Yeah.
would say what's exciting is uh, building a fulfilling career, and to me, that means being able to make have a certain level of impact and progress. And so, with from that respect, I think that specialization is just a strategy, and the strategy meaning saying yes to some things and saying no to a lot of other things, right? It's deciding what to say no to, and it's effective. And so I don't inherently have a problem with specialization. I must say though, however, There are a lot of agencies that are not specialized in a vertical and they're very successful, and that's fine. It's just more difficult to find success today as a generalist, I think, because the amount of noise in the marketplace, you understand this as a marketer
Right.
or producing marketing content, that consumers that the people who you're trying to influence with your content are inundated, we all are, with content and with messages and TikTok reels and all these things all the time. It's really difficult to break through a lot of the noise. One of the ways to break through is by being specific in your in your messaging and in the problems you solve and how you communicate, so that you become a signal amongst the noise. And so that is why I think that potentially there's so many people talking about it these days.
Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, that's a very important conversation to have because I think a lot of people don't understand
Yeah.
the dynamics, of it all. And the reason I was asking is because I was mindful of a tweet that I read
Hmm.
a while ago. Um, and someone said, the today's market really optimizes for specialists as opposed to generalists. And I'm laughing because AI is starting to put a real monkey wrench into that. And like was I said, I'm living long enough to, see the thing everyone said is wrong with me to become the best thing about me, which I'm enjoying. But I kind of, laugh about that everything has become so specialized and so niche and all this sort of thing. But on the other hand, people like, well, why don't we produce Edison or Newton or any of these wonderful thinkers anymore? And I'm like, the solution's very simple. Everyone's too specialized. Everyone's
Right.
all in their tiny boxes and their tiny silos. These
Yeah.
men went everywhere
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time. And
Right.
our
Yeah.
society just isn't optimized to that anymore. So that's
Yeah. I think,
yeah.
yeah, the intellectual curiosity is too expensive, I think, for today's world. Like, it's just, yeah, you have to
Yeah.
specialize in something in order to be potentially viable in the market. There's an argument there potentially, but yeah, I think that is valid. I'm curious how you think AI is impacting this.
Well, I mean, we talk a lot of AI on the show. I've had a parade of
Yeah.
AI people in the last year,
Nice.
and a couple this year as well. Um, I think AI is the ultimate specialist. You can
Mm.
train a GPT to do one task or one area of specialization very specifically. It can't see the forest for the trees, you
Correct.
know,
Right.
sort
Yeah.
of thing. And that I think is kind of, I think the future with AI is those who can see the forest for the trees, those who can not just see the car being manufactured at the assembly line, but
Mm.
every raw input that makes the parts and the pathways those parts get to that, and then where
Yeah.
the car goes afterwards. If you have a mind for that and are able to navigate, we buy steel from here, we buy rubber from here, all this type of thing, and be able to track that all the way through from when the rubber comes off the tree and the metal comes out of the ground to when the car is taken delivery by the customer. If you can comprehend that, the future's for you. Because in
Yeah.
the future, it'll be 150 AIs controlling various and sundry processes of this. But if I think as a human, if you can comprehend all that and keep all the plates spinning, the future's for you in
In
a
other words,
very
being
real
able to
way.
understand, yeah, they understand the nuance and the context of the sort of the larger ecosystem
Yeah,
that's
and
involved.
being
Yeah.
able to understand the individual processes at enough of a level to be able to get involved in them at any time or find out whether there's a
Mm.
problem or kind of go spot the issue, solve the issue, move on to the next thing, but
Mm.
in not just a small specialized area in a whole factory.
Right.
If you think
Right.
about, can you run a factory with 50 people? Well, maybe. With enough AI and automation and people just running around solving the problems that AI cannot do, yeah, maybe you will be able to one day. But you also have to have people who are willing to go and do in so many things in so many different areas in so many different fields, all this type of thing in order to make that successful. And so I think
Right.
if you're only good at one or a few things, I think the time maybe the clock may be running out for you. But
Yeah, well, I think our children, I have a 10-year-old son. He is growing up in a much different world, increasingly different world that I grew up in.
Oh
So there's
yes. No, no,
different.
I've said that, to someone. I said I thank God that I don't have children of my own, just all of my friends and family's
Yeah,
children, because the my childhood is complete. I might as well have grown up on Mars compared to
Mhm.
what kids have today, the way that
Correct.
they, interact with the world, the tools that they have at their disposal. I mean, if you want to confuse a young person, hand them a phone book. Hand them a phone book and a landline phone will keep them busy for hours.
Right.
Sort of thing. I mean, it's just completely irrelevant. I mean, me and my mom had a more similar childhood than me or any of my
Yeah,
many children in my life, sort of thing.
sure.
Which I just think is so weird, and I think one of the reasons why we have so much societal disconnect is too much has changed too fast. But
Yeah.
anyway, we've gone way off
Anyway,
topic. Let me get
yes.
us back on the highway.
All right, do this.
um by asking, what do you, besides specialization in a
Yeah.
vertical, what makes a digital marketing agency successful?
Well, I think it is very much the hard challenge that many agencies face, which is saying yes to the wrong clients. So
Mm,
I think in many ways, getting into, and this goes back to specialization a little bit, but also just in general, where um, business agencies get into business by saying yes to everyone, or agency founders, but eventually that begins to work against them. And so being able to be more disciplined about saying no to bad business is a hard thing to do, but the dividend and the payoff, I think, is that you get better at what you do because you have more practice, you have less variability in your business. And so being able to say no, even in times of scarcity, is often a good thing to do.
yes, that definitely. No, no, no. I mean, that definitely makes. I mean, if the old adage goes, you have to say no before you can say yes, and I think
Yeah.
that, that definitely makes sense. And I think it's also about having, standards, who you want to work with, what kind of business you want to develop, all this sort of
Yes.
thing.
Right. I mean, if you want to make progress, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's easy to stay busy, but busy is different than making progress, right?
right.
Um, doing a bunch of unrelated one-off projects for clients, at the end of the project, you have to start over versus being able to build systems and processes that allow you to get more, let's call it scale, or more systematize, take Fridays off, charge more money, like all these things are helpful in creating what I would say a fuller life than just being busy and being the slave of demanding clients, you know.
Yes. And I think, I mean, that's definitely, I have to say, even for my own self, I think that's the hardest part
Hmm.
for me moving forward. And I'm not really a digital marketing agency, although I am sort of building one with my book publisher called Suit Media, and I'll talk about that someday. Um,
Are you a writer?
yes. Um, and so that, but even with that, I definitely am getting to a place in my life where I want to be doing, sort of less in the day to day. I need to offload a lot of the admin, all this type of thing. And so I have, kind of to your point, I've started figuring out, okay, if I were to teach someone how to do this, how would I do it? Sort of
Sure.
thing. And
Yeah.
also making, advertising vendors, making them standardize their processes to say, no, I'm not just going to do whatever you at whenever. No, 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 no. We're going to
Right.
have a system for all of this because I want to be in a place where I can hand it off to someone one day. And I
Yes.
think that key for people might be a thought unlock of, if you have something that's more standardized, more systematized, build one vertical, move on to the next, sort of thing, if you really
Correct.
want to grow, sort of thing. Um,
Yeah.
I think the freedom it allows you for things to, take care of themselves in the hands of a quality team, and you get more time back in other ways. I think that could
Yes.
be an important unlock for people.
So there's a great book you may or may not have heard of it. It's called Buy Back Your Time, Dan Martell,
Yeah.
and it is based on this premise of creating by doing first off a time and energy audit. Take 2 weeks, every 15 minutes, write down what you're doing, and then go back after 2 weeks. And next to each one of those 15-minute activities, write $1 sign if it's a low value activity, $2 signs if it's a medium value activity, and $3 signs if it is a high value activity. And then based on your effective hourly rate, which is how much money your business makes or you make divided by the number of hours, if there's anything that is less, like it does not justify your hourly rate, then that would be something that you'd be better off theoretically outsourcing or having an assistant that you would pay not as much as you'd pay yourself, so that you can buy back your time to spend more time on the high value activities, right? That's sort of one concept in the book, which is really powerful. And the other one is the buyback ladder, which is as you're systematizing your business, the first thing you want to do is you want to buy back your time through getting an assistant. And this assistant can do things like manage all your email, all your scheduling, your calendar, all of the sort of the $1 sign activities. Then you find someone to manage your clients, and you find someone to manage your marketing, and then finally someone to manage your sales, right? And that's that ladder that you go up as you systematize your business that allows you to really focus on areas where you can really make the most impact in your business.
Yes, I have thought about a lot of my thinking for the future of the Cameron Journal has been around, yes, I need to hand off our content, uh our partner, our native advertising content partner stuff, because it is a lovely, great, consistent source of revenue.
Mm,
But my time is too valuable to continue doing it. I need to
yeah.
let that go, which is one of
Mm,
the reasons why I'm building the process of how it works so that I can easily train someone to do it.
perfect.
And then, yes, I loved having a publicist. I should get one again. Because although those tasks lead to great opportunities, it's so tedious. Oh my goodness. And I don't necessarily mind doing it. I cut my teeth doing it. That was how I
Yeah.
got started, was doing, I was a freelance writer first of all, and was doing press releases and PR and engaging with media. That's how I got into magazines. That's why we're sitting here today.
Mhm.
Was because of all of that. But the reality is, when doing it for myself over the camera, it's time to hand it off. I've engaged in an AI tool for part of that, but I'm also looking at putting someone in charge of that, which means they're also probably going to get social media too. And that I
Yeah.
have very programmatic. I have that very for my own sanity. I have that. So that's something where I just need a watcher. I need
Yeah.
someone watching all of that.
Yeah.
Because much of it's automated and I just need them to kind of watch out for it, respond to comments and all this sort of thing. And
Yeah.
incidentally, in my other business, we have someone who does that for us. It's very nice because I can just sort of issue orders from on high of what I like to see on social media, and someone sends me a spreadsheet and I say yes, and then we have a very nice guy who does it for us. It's great. And then I turn around and go back to doing my own and be like, I really need to, I should learn from that other thing, sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's rather nice. I should get that for myself. And so, yeah, I think it is very, but I think there's also, and I want to kind of dive into this part. I think sometimes people have, I don't know if you found this,
Mm.
kind of trouble letting go. When you get used to doing it all and you're kind of
Sure.
involved in everything, and maybe you've hired some people, but they've become dependent on you for everything, sort of
Yep.
thing. It can be difficult to let things go. And depending on how you answer depends on whether I send this to my co-founder or not, because he likes to micromanage and hates to let things go. And I keep telling him, you've got to let people do their job, sort of thing. And
Yep.
so he and I have a forever ongoing debate for 2 years about that. So I'm
I have
excited to
two
hear what you think
comments.
about that.
I have
Yeah,
two
good.
comments.
Then I'm going to cut this
uh,
part out and send it to him.
yeah. So something 80% done that you didn't have to touch is 100% fucking awesome. Hopefully I can swear,
Yeah,
because you didn't have to touch it. Right.
right.
So you have to be comfortable with not with stuff going out to clients that maybe isn't is as good as you would have done it, but it is good enough that meets your standards, right? You don't want to compromise standards. You have clear, defined standards that you train people on, hold them accountable, and you measure them against. But the fact that you don't touch it is 100% awesome. That's number one. Number two is, have you heard about the 10-80-10 rule?
No, no, please educate us.
Okay, so the 10-80-10 is if you have a project that you want to definitely be involved in, what you do is you do the 10% up front, set the outline, set the expectation, the parameters, what you're looking for, what done looks like. Then you give it to a resource to do 80% of the research, the grunt work, and then at the very end, you do the last 10%. You fine tune it, clean it up, and then you set it off. So effectively, instead of doing 100% of it, you do 10%. Someone else the 80%, and you do the last 10%. It's the 10-80-10 rule.
Nice. I think that method, I think for a lot, especially, for someone, like for me so much, I mean, I am my business is me sort of thing. For now,
Mm.
that's not, I don't always want it to be that way. I would like one day for this, excuse me one moment.
Oh.
Good Lord. Things happening in the throat. I would like one day for this publication to be much bigger than me, and we're beginning to head in that direction with new contributors and everything,
Mhm.
which is great. But for those of us who we are our business is us, I think that's a wonderful guide. It's like you're involved in the beginning and the end, but you don't necessarily have to deal with the messy middle, which gives you more time to work on other stuff, just relax, all this type of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Get some work-life balance going, especially for those of us that, people kind of like work-life balance. I'm like, that's adorable. I was like, that's a lovely concept as an
Right.
idea that exists in the
Right.
world. I'm sure somewhere for someone else, not me. I think that's the goal. I think that's incredibly helpful. As I think, especially if you have trouble letting things go, because you're still involved, but not involved
Sure.
as much.
No, exactly.
That's
It's
key.
it's going out. It's going out the way you want it to go out. You just don't have to do all the work to get it there.
And that's quite helpful, you know,
Good.
especially for the micromanaging crowd that loves to
Yes, exactly.
micromanage. Um, so I want to learn a little bit more about you, though. Now that we've talked
Okay.
about the book and these films and everything, how did you get into the digital marketing space?
Well, back out after I graduated college, I went to UC Santa Cruz.
Hmm.
Go banana slugs. I came back home. I lived in Los Angeles, and this was back in the late '90s, and this was the time when things like AOL was a big deal. There was a big internet craze. A lot of money was being pulled into the internet. Eventually, the internet bubble. I'm sure you may have heard of or know of, but my best friend and I, we wrote a business plan. Two kids, no business, writing business plans, but it was that the season was perfect. We ended up raising $6 million to start our startup company. And it was in the category of streaming media, which is not really a thing today. But back then, it was the same time that Mark Cuban, who used to own the Mavs, he sold a company to Yahoo for $5.7 billion doing streaming media, the same thing that we started our business for. And so that kind of got me into the internet space. Digital marketing was definitely a thing. Effectively, what the business was is that we would stream live events, live on location events on the internet. So things like we did Stone Temple Pilots, their concert we put on the internet. We would do movie premieres. We do different business events. Anything that was interesting to be live on the internet. The problem was back then, unfortunately, was that most people were dialing up to the internet with the 56K modem, which meant that
Right.
the frame rate was very slow. And so, despite doing really great high quality streaming media, the end user was not able to really enjoy the video. They got like a frame a second, really bad. And so that kind of got me into the media and marketing advertising space. And then I went to business school, USC here. And then instead of going into commercial real estate, which is what a lot of my classmates went into, I went into digital marketing because I had been kind of a consultant doing SEO and websites a little bit on the side. And I thought that this is back in 2005, 2006. It was a good time to get into the internet. So that's why I started at an agency, and I've been in the agency space ever since.
Yes, why did you, so you decided to do it because you had that great experience doing those live streaming events sort of thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're like, yeah, this has growth potential and wanted to keep
yeah,
going.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
And I love
fascinating.
sales. I got a job in sales at an agency. I loved sales, and so I just decided I'm going to get involved in a growing industry that I have some experience in and do sales, make a lot of money. And that led to me eventually becoming a chief marketing officer at this big growth story that we talked about.
Yeah, that's that's no, that's I mean yeah, that was an excellent idea. Probably 5 years too
Too
early.
early, I know.
Um, yeah, I ran into that several times when I was doing this underground project because we were working with bands and doing a record label and doing promotion at local venues and all this type of thing. And I
Yeah.
really liked doing that at one time and doing lots of live events, and I was very into that at that time. Um, and whatnot. We were doing our own t-shirts. We had our own original t-shirt designs, all this type of thing. And now it's incredibly easy to do that. It was not back then.
No,
Our
exactly.
t-shirts were made by a place who did sports uniforms, sort of
Yes,
thing.
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it
The
was,
silk
and
screen.
literally the whole idea of like every content creator having like, oh, their own merch, all this type of thing. We literally, if we had waited 5 years, like
Right.
what we pioneered doing and did with great difficulty later on became de rigueur. Like it's kind of funny to
Sure.
watch
Yeah.
how that
Yeah.
happens. Even with this, when I started this show in 2014, and I was telling people, "Oh, I have a podcast." Podcasts already been around for 12 years, but hardly anyone knew what they were. It
Oh
was a
God.
very small market sort of thing. And so when
Yeah.
I first started this, I had a terrible time getting people to understand like what a podcast was, where to access it, where to watch a video on YouTube, because mass adoption hadn't really happened yet, sort of
Sure.
thing.
No, it's very early. Yeah.
And then I left in 2017, worked for a while, was a director of marketing, all this type of thing.
Yeah.
Because I'd worked in nightlife by this time and run two magazines, and you had pioneer reading content online and all this sort of thing. And then when I came back to this in 2019 and I started kind of the second arc, no explanation was required ever. Like I've never in the almost 6 years this fall of this, I've never had to explain to someone what a
Sure.
podcast is, what YouTube is, where to watch the show, none of that. And that's all it took with 3 years, two and a half
Yeah.
really, of it
Sure.
changing. And then all of a sudden everyone knew what it was and it was totally fine. And so it's I think it's very hard to be on the bleeding edge of things because it only works if the timing's right. If you can get the timing
There's
right,
too much luck
it's
involved.
wonderful. But
Yeah.
miss
Yeah.
it a little
Yeah.
bit on either side and you're done
Sure.
for.
Yeah. It's luck for sure. I mean, yeah, we had a good idea. We were solving a real problem, but it just was not the right time. I'll tell you something
Yeah.
funny. You just reminded me that uh the way that we got the business plan was that we started putting cameras in bars where and just using their DSL whatever connection to be able to stream. So you could go on the internet, go to our website and check out all the local bars in Santa Monica that we had cameras in live. In other words,
Yeah.
you could see which bars were actually full and you could watch the band and all these things. And eventually the bars did not like that very much longer because they realized that they would people would be able to tell if the bar was empty and you never want to go to an empty bar, right? So they
Right.
shut it down.
No, that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
That's yeah, I've seen different weird things happen. People try different businesses and bars. My second magazine I worked at was a nightlife magazine, and that was our
Mm.
distribution was just in bars and whatever have you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we would just leave copies of it kind of around, and that's how that was our earliest distribution sort of thing. One
Yeah.
of our first fashion shows was in a bar that had just opened. No one kind of knew who they were. They hadn't, really developed anything. And so we basically built their bar at the same
Sure.
time we were building
Big
our thing because
PR event,
we
right? Yeah.
had the girls in the clothes and could draw a little bit of a crowd that got the people who did that sort of thing interested in it. And
Yeah.
then, and it took off. They lasted longer than we did, but they had a great run. Um,
There's
you
your
know,
business. Bar launch company.
Yeah, no, that was a big for that business. That was a big part of it. The first probably three big successes we had were that absolutely. So
That's
it's
cool.
yeah, it was kind of a weird thing,
Yeah.
but what it did is it got people in downtown Denver who like to go around bar hopping to start stopping off there, sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Right. Put it on
And
the
so when
map.
we had a show, we got 50, 75 people that first show. The crowd was not huge. The place was mostly empty, but word started to spread. and we were at the center of it, and so it was very cool and
That's
everything.
cool. That's
So
fun.
yes, absolutely. Um, so how's the consulting game now in the digital marketing space? How are you enjoying that? How did you get that off the ground?
So I was lucky enough to come off of my role there at that last company. And because people, it had a kind of a brand name in the agency space, the company I worked for and the big success. So
Hmm.
people, if I was able to drop the name Scorpion and people would know who we were, and many, not everyone, but a lot of companies wanted to emulate that success. So luckily, it was fairly easy for me to kind of get things going. All I would say is, I'm the ex CMO of Scorpion. They say, "Oh, you're the company that blew up in 6 years from nothing to $150 million. Can you help me grow really quickly too?" And so I had that benefit. So I wasn't starting completely from scratch.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, one of the things I committed to doing was to write a book. And the reason why I did that is that two things. One, it's a good calling card, sending my book to my target audience, my ICP, right? Meaning ideal customer profile. It builds credibility, establishes trust, and all these things. And it makes conversations. But secondarily, is in the process of writing my book, it forced me to find a way to articulate my ideas in a way that is clear and succinct, and that actually follows logic. Right? It's one thing to have these ideas and these strategies in my head, but when I'm trying to communicate it, I realize I'm not really good at communicating these ideas, and it's not. There's a lot of gaps in what I'm thinking. So the process of writing a book and then hiring a great editor, which was transformative in my book writing process, um, was really helpful in me establishing the talking points and really my thinking around the problems that I've set out to solve.
Hmm. And what would you say those problems were? Just the
So
trying to get people out of the founder-led sales problem, or
the two
yeah,
problems, yep, founder-led
yep,
sales and the generalist trap, right? Those are two
yeah,
problems that I experienced. And then when I started consulting, a lot of businesses came to me with that. That was effectively the theme that kept coming up again and again.
yeah.
Mm.
How was writing the book? What was your process like? How did you get your ideas out of your head onto the paper?
So what I would do is I just do daily time blocking. I didn't have the luxury of just not having to work, so I worked while writing the book. But I would spend about 2 to 3 hours every day in the morning. I just time block, nothing else. Turned off email, everything, door closed, and I got a version of the book. It's called version one of the manuscript. And then I did something based on some advice that I got, which was I had beta readers, which is effectively I'm writing my book for a specific audience. Typically, the more specific the audience, the better the book or the more resonance it will have. So I would send this manuscript to a handful, there's like 30 different people that I was writing the book for. They went through the book and gave me a ton of feedback, really good feedback. The biggest piece was, despite my book being about not writing to everyone, my book was too broad. I was writing to businesses in general when the people I really was trying to influence were agencies. And the reason why I knew that was because they said, "This is really great. I understand conceptually, but I wish there were more examples of agencies in this book. I wish that you could show me, give me some more context around how to apply this to my agency." I got that feedback and I rewrote it with that in mind, made it much better. And then I hired a great editor who was very gentle with me. Uh, and she basically told me, and these are my words, not hers, that this needs a lot of work. But we'll get there, type of thing. Like she was very kind. And so she helped me to take something that was iffy to turn and help me to turn into something that I'm very proud of. So she was a developmental editor and she also helped me with copy editing.
Very nice. That no, I have a book coming out. You're
Oh,
recording this on the 24th of February. This will not come out for a couple months, so the book will long be out by the time people hear this. But I have a book coming out next week on March 3rd that started out as two PDF files of scanned typewriter pages
oh, okay.
of this giant book, and we had to turn it into a real story. And
Oh
after
my God.
just short of a year, it's coming out Monday next, which is exciting.
Congratulations. That's great,
Um,
Cameron.
Yes, it very exciting for him and his whole project and all that it's taken to get us here and everything. It's a lot. It's really it's really cool. I enjoy developmental editing because I am not a good line editor. I hire out for that. Um, I learned that a long time ago. But I do love taking the disparate parts and putting it together for people.
Yes.
One of the
Yeah.
very, very first clients I ever had was a guy who was Iranian and he was telling his stories in his memoir and all this type of thing. Um, and he hired me for some line editing, which I kind of quickly figured out I wasn't that great at doing. But what I did send back was pages and pages of feedback of how I would completely reconstruct this whole book, make it way more
Yes.
interesting, cut a bunch of
Yes.
stuff that wasn't necessarily there, all this type of thing. And he paid me kind of one of the most interesting compliments ever. He wrote back and he said, "You're a terrible line editor, but you are a great artist. I wish you much luck."
Mm. Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, and then I just kind of kept that in the feather in my cap. I never really did much with it for years and years and thereafter because I was building the Cameron drill and everything. But last year, coming out of my MFA, I started getting into that and I started taking on these sorts of projects and everything. It is an insane amount of work to get
Oh,
something, ready to go, to even get ready to go to line editing or proofing and production sort of thing. But it's a lot of fun. Right now, I have a client. We're kind of co-writing her. She hired me for development editing, but really didn't have a book. We're kind of co-creating it in terms of
sure.
she writes a lot, I fix a lot,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of fun. And it's very interesting to say yes, more on this. No, we have plenty of that. I really want to
Right.
hear you talk about this sort of thing, and
Right.
kind of getting it out of people. So I totally understand how you would have found that a great process because I've watched people really bloom and thrive with me, so I'm not surprised that
Yeah.
you did it as well. Especially not
Well,
coming from a book writing literature
that's
background.
exactly right.
I've been
I
doing
had
this
no
since I was
context.
17 years old, so it's a
Yes.
totally different,
Right.
you
Right.
led a whole completely other, life. So it's a very different
Yes.
thing when you come from something else and then go to write a book to compare to those of us who've been doing this all the time. So
Exactly. I was feeling around in the dark. I did not know what I was doing. So that's why, and I wanted to produce something that I was proud of that I could give to my family and have as a something that is truly a reflection of myself. And so that's why she wasn't cheap. I had to hire someone. I wanted to hire someone good so that it could take what I had written, the chicken scratch that I wrote, and help me to close the gaps, make it more concise and more and better, easy to read, like all of those things. Like, yeah, it's very, very good investment.
yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, this is the part of the show we've gone all over the place. Your book
Yeah.
may be specialized, but this podcast has not been. So I why don't you tell us where we can find you
Yeah.
online and keep in touch and buy the book, of course.
So I would love to offer your listeners, Cameron, a free book, free copy of this. It's the audiobook version of the book. It's the same audiobook that you buy on Amazon. I'm going to give it to your readers for free or your listeners for free. You just go to anyonenoteveryone.com and there you can access it. You could also access the book's companion workbook. It is templates and worksheets and videos and all this stuff to help you to implement this system from being a generalist to a vertical market specialist. It's all free, it's all available. Just go to anyonenoteveryone.com and you could access it there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Karen. Likewise, it's been fun.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast.